He's the GM of the LA Chargers. He's kind enough to spend some time with us. Tom Telesco, our guest here on the Doug Gottlieb Show on Fox Sports Radio. You know, it's really interesting that so many teams in the league, the contract disputes, they become public and they drag out and they get to camp. And I know Mike Williams had to be done earlier.
Right.
Derwin's was done, you know, I think shortly before camp, or announced shortly before camp. I know when it was actually agreed to, whatever. But one of the things that I guess it not only impressed me but interests me is how have you been able to get these things done and it not get at least openly tenuous?
It's usually respect on both sides. You know, it's a business, and you have to treat it like that. And even though it's football and there's emotions involved, it's a business, and there's always both sides of it. And, you know, this is someone, you know, these players, I mean, they play for us, a part of, you know, the family. I know it's a business, but they're part of that family, but there's business you have to take care of, so you try and do that in the best way possible. And normally we'd like to have these contracts done before training camp. A couple years ago with Joey and Keenan Allen, due to the pandemic, we had to do them later than we usually would do. Usually we do it in the spring. But with an extension, sometimes it bleeds into training camp. It's just the way it goes, and we'll just deal with it and just try and figure out the best way we can. But this is the good thing, if there is a good thing. You know, with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, and really with Nas Adderley and Asante Samuel, J.C. Jackson, those guys are really taking ownership of this defense right now. It's great seeing these guys come together and play.
Well, you mentioned Khalil. And obviously, like, look, if you were going to be honest and say, what was the hole last year? You know, you had the pandemic game against Houston where you don't have any players, right? I mean, there's other things that go bump in the night, but the ability to stop the run consistently was the issue. Is Khalil alone? Is that what fixes it? Like, how does it work for you in terms of, okay, it's pieces on a chessboard. You got to work with Coach Staley and figure out how does that happen?
It was one of the issues, but yeah, it was a bit of an issue. But again, it takes a little bit of time. You know, we transition from Gus Bradley's defense, which is an excellent scheme, but requires different style of players than the Brandon Staley, Ronaldo Hill defense, which is a great scheme, but requires different style of players. So it's going to take you a little bit of time to get those players in place. So I think inside we've got some people that are more fit to play this style of defense. That's going to help against the run. Obviously, Khalil helps on the edge because Khalil's really he's a two-way player and he plays the run extremely well. And then even from the secondary, as far as your run fits, that's a big part of this, especially the way we play. Whoever that eighth guy is going to be, it changes who it is. So that's kind of how you get better there. But in this league, you got to rush the passer and you got to cover behind you. Yes, you do have to stop the run, certainly in the red zone, certainly in goal-to-goal situations. But really, you got to rush the passer and cover people, and that's what we try to get better at this offseason.
And then you got to protect the passer. Obviously, Slater was amazing last year, considering how young he is. What about the offensive line and how that's coming together?
Yeah, been really, really happy. Yeah, last year with Rashaan, it was just kind of uncommon that, you know, he comes into camp first couple of days and he didn't even play his last year in college, obviously, and like, wow, like he can go, he can play, and he's going against Joey every day. And that's not normal. I try to prepare everybody for that when Zion Johnson walks in the door. Zion comes in the first couple of days and done a hell of a job. He really has. I mean, he's smart, he's diligent, he's strong, and he's kind of, you know, fit right in with the guys. There's going to be a transition, I know that, but it's so important for us not only to protect the quarterback, which is, you know, pretty easy to see, but we have to be able to run the ball better when teams know you're going to run it, which is in the fourth quarter when you have a lead, which is down in goal-to-goal situations. We got to run it better. So that group's really going to help.
Justin is going to be up for an extension at the end of next year. If it was you, would you do it? Could you do it now? Because the numbers, I mean, he's going to be worth it. I mean, I just like how do you even sit here and wait and just watching these numbers go up and up and up and think, what is this going to be like in the offseason?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. It really doesn't. It's just you'll build a team a different way, but there's a lot of different ways to build the team. Would I do it now? No, because we got Derwin enough to get finished right now, and then I like the focus to be on the field once we get to training camp. But when we can do Justin, we'll do it. And yeah, the numbers will be big. You know, he's shown that he can lead this football team for a really long time, and then we'll just kind of change how we build the team, just like everybody else does in the same situation.
What were the emotions like of that Raiders game?
Oh, my God. You had to bring it up. It was tough. I've actually gone back. I didn't go back and watch it till way after the season was over. But it was a difficult – this is the most difficult part of that game. About 3 weeks before, we were on track, to possibly win the division. We're playing Kansas City on Thursday night and lose that game. And then we just kind of faded down the stretch. We just couldn't hold it that month of December. And then that showed up in that last Raiders game. We just couldn't hold it at the end. So it was hard because I really felt like we had a team good enough to be in the playoffs. but we didn't play well enough in December when you got to play your best football to get there.
You trust Brandon Staley, obviously, and you and I have discussed on air, off air, going for it on fourth down. But has there ever been a point you're like, I don't know. Like on the 19-yard, there's ever like, I don't know.
I'll tell you what, I trust our head coach. We talked about this through the interview process of how he's going to play and what our identity is going to be, and it's been right spot on, which I love. I trust him, and I also know that everyone is not going to work 100% of the time, and there's going to be some situations where, it made me feel a little uncomfortable, but there were a lot of them that made it feel uncomfortable, and we converted and moved. So I just trust his judgment. It's not just all off the cuff. I mean, a lot of it is researched beforehand, so he's taking that all into account, and he also takes into account the context of the game. But I trust him, so I don't. It doesn't bother me a whole lot.
You've built teams to compete against Khalil, and you've talked a lot about free agency. Hey, look, it can be hit or miss now. It's not even a 50-50 shot. It's more a 33% shot in terms of guys that actually live up to whatever you pay them as a free agent. And Khalil's different now than he was back when he was with the Raiders, when he was arguably the best defensive player in the league. How has he so far meshed with what your vision of him will be? So
far, exactly what we had hoped, and it was, part of it is not just being, the type of player and see where he is in his career, but how is he going to, kind of mesh in with everybody else that's here? He's coming in from the outside, and just seeing him and Joey working off on the side by themselves during a special teams period that they're not involved in, they're off on the side working together and working on different moves and talking football, and that's kind of that natural being a teammate process you work through. And he fits in with those guys. Now, we knew going in, Brandon had coached him, so we had intimate knowledge of him. It's a big thing for me. If you're going to trade for a player, especially that type of contract, or you're going to sign a big free agent and pay him a lot of money, try to mitigate your risk as much as you can. And the fact that we had a coach that had been with him, had coached him, knew him, could really say, hey, look, this guy fits what we do. We'll fit with our team. That's a big help.
So oftentimes, I think as fans, we look at those tangible assets. But all of these players you're talking about, Joey, Khalil, Derwin James is brilliant in how he plays and understands football. Obviously, Herbert, but Keenan is. I mean, that's like a computer over there in terms of route running and reading. In your evaluation, how much does intelligence come into play, and in terms of what a guy ultimately can be on an NFL football field?
Football intelligence and processing is such a big part of being a player in every sport, certainly basketball as well, I know. In football, it's just more than physical ability. You have to be able to process in real time and process quickly and do it fast. So, but it's also very hard to scout, obviously.
Yeah, that's interesting because,
yes.
But look, we always think of that. Again, fans or broadcasters, we always think of quarterback and processing. Okay, but Rashaan's got to process at left tackle, right? Keenan's got to process and in terms of what he's seeing and what Justin's seeing as well. And so how do you scout that? Is it just conversations with?
A lot of times it's conversations with people who have had that player before and had him on an everyday basis. So say it's a college prospect, talking to his college coaches. There's only so much scouting we can do. We're not there every single day. But certainly on the offensive side of the ball, probably not so much as a pass rusher. I mean, there's always processing and making decisions. But just say Keenan Allen, for example, there's you leave the huddle with one play, you get to the line of scrimmage, and they're in a certain coverage. Then they rotate to a different coverage, and then maybe Justin changes the play, and you're completely processing that whole time. And then the ball snap, they may change their coverage again, or something may happen. So, the fact that if people think football players are just big brutes and not very smart, it's impossible to play this game without having intelligence.
This division is intense. I mean, it's always been competitive, but now everybody's got quarterback, everybody's got a dude or two to throw to, and it appears on paper like the best and most competitive division in the National Football League. Does that affect in any way your preparation for the season?
I don't think so. It actually should really help the focus. I mean, we opened with the Raiders right off the bat, so it's we know it's a good division. We know there's big-time quarterbacks in the division. And you have to be ready to play every single week. I think it's going to be fun. I really do. I mean, all of our division games will feel like playoff games. And some of them last year did, like the Kansas City game. December felt like a playoff game. The Raiders game, certainly, it really was a playoff game. And that last game of the year felt like a playoff game. It's going to be a great atmosphere. It's going to prepare teams, including us, for the playoffs.
And last year was the first year that you had games where you had a home field advantage, right? I mean, it started Obviously, it would have helped if the Rams didn't win the Super Bowl, but it does. It feels like the tide is changing at SoFi, at least to the outsider. To the insider, the guy who you walk on that field, of course, you're up in the box. Does it feel like that's changing in terms of the percentage of Charger fans?
Yeah, I was really pleased last year. And by the way, there's plenty of people in the Los Angeles area for two teams, so that I'm not worried about. But yes, I didn't know quite what to expect last year walking into the first year with fans in our stadium. I was really pleased. Even I get there really early. I'm pulling up and I see Charger fans walking down Century Boulevard wearing Herbert jerseys. Just great to see. So we knew it was going to take time here in this market. We still was going to need some time. But, when you have a quarterback like we do and a head coach like we do, I think it starts to accelerate a little bit. We saw that last year. We'll see it more this year.
Anytime I talk about the Chargers, you will inevitably get yeah, I know they got lots of players, but they're the Chargers. To people who question the validity of expectations of deep into the playoffs, what do you say?
Seems like great sports radio talk. It does. Every year is completely different. Every year is unique to itself. So whatever happened last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, really has no bearing on this team. So.
I agree. Okay, how about this? Level of confidence at this point in time in your ability to achieve the potential of this team.
I think the potential is there. But I'm not so much focused on the end. I'm really focused on right now getting these guys ready to go. But we know this. When we need a drive on offense, when we need a third down, we need a fourth down, our quarterback really can come through. And we saw that his rookie year. We saw that last year. There's been some tough situations and some we got to have a drive, and he produces for us. You got to get a defense that can do that same thing, get the ball back a little bit more, a couple more stops, we'll be okay.
How did everybody, at least publicly, miss on that element of Justin Herbert? Because, and I know you heard it when you drafted him, which was it was dink and dunk at Oregon, and don't know if he steps into the big throw, don't know if he really throw, and it's completely opposite. This dude makes every throw. The bigger the moment, the better he seems to play, right? He bounces back from a mistake. Yes. How did you miss? It's not like it's a position that's not evaluated and over-evaluated. It's not like it was a year in which quarterbacks weren't evaluated and over-evaluated, and you had an extra year to evaluate. How did so many people miss on those elements of Justin?
Yeah, it's hard to tell since he went sick, so I don't know, who behind us may have taken him, but scouting is an inexact science. There's no perfect players. As we look at the players, we have to decide where the strengths, where the weaknesses, what strengths can we improve on, which ones maybe you can't. Justin and Oregon, they won a lot of games there, and they moved the ball and they scored points. They did it in a way that worked for them. That's fine, but we had to kind of really look and see, hey, look, transition to the NFL, and you have to do this for every position. How do we think that translates to this level when you put his physical ability along with his intangibles? Hey, look, I think we can make this work, but you never know until you take them.
But there's still, it's a little bit it's the Steph Curry thing, right? The Warriors actually offered up Steph Curry or Monte Ellis to the Bucks after a couple of years. So we could sit here and go the Warriors knew, but even they didn't know. There had to be an element of it, when he's making those plays and those throws, even in his rookie year's first start, right?
No doubt.
Where you're everybody's you knew. You're I didn't really know, but huh?
No, Justin Herbert, even last year with Rashaan Slater, you don't draft a lineman in the first round thinking he's going to be in the Pro Bowl his first year. It's not what you're thinking. You're just hoping he can kind of come along, develop. Hopefully he'll start for you, first round pick. But just keep coming along, develop. That's a tough position. No, you don't really think that. With Justin, he jumped in there, and it's just been storybook from them. I shouldn't say storybook because he's put a lot of work into it, but who would have thought he'd come in that early, that quickly, and play that well? Obviously we didn't because we didn't start him that first game. So, it's just it's a pretty amazing story.
Pretty amazing stuff. Well, look, I can't wait to see them on the field at SoFi. We really appreciate you joining us here on Fox Sports Radio.
Anytime. Thanks for having me on.